Welcome to the Mind Rise podcast, the catalyst that takes you from who you are right now to all that you can become. All right, guys, I am excited for this episode of the Mind Rise podcast where we are talking about what seems like a simple concept, but isn't always, and it's called showing up for yourself. Showing up for yourself is huge. More often than not, we are very well practiced in showing up for everybody else, right? What role can I fill? Who can I support? What am I supposed to be doing here? Right? We show up because someone's expecting something of us. We show up because we're expecting it of ourselves to provide for them, right? There's often this output of energy. And I want to think of showing up for yourself as the next level of Mario, right? It takes a certain level of maturity to evolve past survival. Because the truth is, yes, it's amazing and it's wonderful, and we have to hold on to accountability and we have to show up for other people. But there is a truth that it is a far more evolved process to show up for yourself. And in fact, if you want to get geeky with it a little bit, Maslow's hierarchy would dictate that we would need to have that foundation of food, water, shelter in order to even evolve to the next level in which we are accessing anything more than what is required to survive. And the same thing is true about showing up for yourself. If you feel like you are in a survival mode, in your friendships, with your romantic relationship, at work, in your family of origin, in the family that you're building and those small people that you're in charge of. If you feel like you are in a survival mode, guess what the first thing to go out the window is? It's showing up for yourself. We're looking at the list and we're just gonna go ahead and cross that one right off the list. And why is that? Well, it goes back all the way to our biology. Our biology and how we are specifically wired to survive is that we need other people. And in needing other people and in being connected to other people, that is what has ensured our survival. So, just a little anthropology lesson for you real quick, right? The original four peoples were the Floresians, the Denisovans, the Neanderthals, and the Homo sapiens. That's us, right? So they were in different parts of what we now know as our globe, but the Floresians survived because at full-grown adults, they were about the size of kindergartners, right? So they needed very few calories, and therefore that helped in their survival. The Denisovans were up there in Siberia, and their survival skill was being able to deal with extreme cold. Like that helped them to survive. The Neanderthals, right? We know those most commonly, and Neanderthals were like the size of a refrigerator, and therefore, like they survived by way of just being big and strong. But then here we have the Homo sapiens who don't have any of those three skills. We just don't. That's not how we were built. And why are Homo sapiens the only peoples to have survived, right? Is, well, unfortunately, and like, here's the sad part. We killed all the other ones. Sorry about that. Spoiler alert here, guys, if you haven't attended that part of anthropology class. We killed everybody else. And how did we do that? Well, we have a super special skill, and that special skill is coming together and telling each other a story that helps to bond us together. So this is important when you think about the concept of showing up for yourself, because our foundation, our biology, our wiring to survive is connection with other, to the point in which we make other people more important than ourselves. And this is not me getting on my soapbox about being selfish, which in fact, that soapbox would tell you that selfish is not necessarily a bad thing. And in fact, many ways, especially in American culture, we were always taught, don't be selfish, share your crayons, don't be selfish, give your toy to someone else. And perhaps that message could have been done a little bit differently. But I digress. We go back to this place of connection. So if you are feeling like your status, if you are feeling like your position, if you are feeling like you're being needed or having a purpose or your role is in question in any way, or you feel like you are under attack or in a survival mode in any of those big areas in your life. And I like to think of them as the big six. And the big six would be our finances, our spirituality, our vocation, which is often our career, our relationships, right? Our health, our physical health, our mental health, right? Those are the big six. And if in any way we are feeling under attack, if we are feeling like we are in a survival mode, then guess what? We are just going to go Maslow's hierarchy, food, water, shelter. How do I remain as biologically connected to other people as possible? And enter stage left, self-abandonment. That's what is the key to it all. Is that if I look at my list and I cross self off the list in order to stay connected to you, in order to ensure that my boss likes me, or we've seen kids do it all the time. We were guilty of it on the playground too, that they're not going to stand up for themselves because they want to be part of the in crowd. If we feel at all that we will risk disconnection by making ourselves a priority, then guess what? We're not going to do it. We are absolutely not going to do it. I can't tell you how many people that I have worked with as clients, myself included, that they have like the sexiest LinkedIn humanly possible, like the fat bank account, the amazing business card with the super hot title. And the truth is that they would just as quickly self abandon and take themselves off the list of taking care of themselves if it meant risking disconnection with a unit. And a unit can be in our home, a unit can be in friendships, relationships, a unit can be at our workplace, right? So that is why I say to you that showing up for yourself is actually the next level in Mario here, right? Because if you are able to evolve out of just survival, and we can kind of, and for anybody who's listening, and I'm also doing the video on YouTube, this is me raising my hand from one level to the next to show the difference between where you are and where you climb to, where we climb to. And I also use the example of Mario because for any of us who've played video games, especially, Super Mario, that you had different trials and tribulations that you had to pass to go from level one to level two, right? If you couldn't hop over that like spinning rod of fire, then guess what? You were going to die and you go back to start and you've got to do that level all over again. So the experience that we have in life, right? We grow by way of our challenges. We grow by way of showing up within those challenges. And when we show up within those challenges, we get to put more tools in our toolbox. We are acquiring more skills. Another analogy of it, going back to old school childhood, is Oregon Trail, right? So there we are playing Oregon Trail. And along the way, if we wanted to survive, we needed supplies. And the same thing is true of life. Like, if you want to survive, you need supplies. Like, sure, you're going to need an ox and you're going to need a pickaxe. Like, you're going to need some stuff for the things that you will encounter through life. So, that next level being showing up for yourself, and it brings you to this awesome vantage point of maturation. And maturation isn't necessarily dictated on the number of years old that you are, but maturation is often dictated by the experiences that we have that invite us to rise, right? To rise within ourselves, to acquire more tools in our toolbox, and to figure out how we are doing this thing called life. So from this vantage point, I almost want you to think about yourself as like, oh my gosh, remember those Muppets from the Muppets who sat in the balcony? There was like those two guys, and they were constantly making comments about the show that they were watching. I almost want you to put yourself up there, right? Put yourself in that balcony and look down at the show on stage that is your life. And that show on stage is playing like likely one, if not all, of the big six, right? It's playing out your finances, it's playing out your spirituality, it's playing out your relationships, it's playing out your vocation, it's playing out your mental and emotional well being. Like, it's playing all these things out on stage with all the supporting actors at once. When we show up for ourselves, We come from this vantage point of now looking at all the things that are going on and saying, what standard or standards am I setting for myself? What standards am I setting for myself in this life? So I'm a big fan of reflection. You guys know this happens by way of like coaching calls. It happens by way of group calls. I've got this awesome mastermind group. It comes by way of retreats that we go on. Frankly, reflection can come by way of you stopping at a red light, not picking up your phone, and just taking a deep breath and thinking about your day, thinking about your year, thinking about an important event, right? Reflection can happen at many times of our life. We just have to make time for it. But the advantage to reflection is that it's an accelerant. So going back to our Mario example, remember when Mario would like hit one of those boxes or eat one of those mushrooms, and then he would be like become Super Mario, and he's like super fast and he's like super impenetrable for just a short bit of time. Well, that's what reflection does for us. Reflection allows us to really kick things up a notch. And again, I'm not making an argument for urgency or rushing to figure it all out because guess what? Spoiler alert, there's actually like no really figuring it all out. There's no finish line. We're just doing this darn thing called life, right? So when we show up for ourselves, so here we are in that balcony and we're looking down at all of life. And this is about you setting standards in your life. Again, remember, it is impossible to set standards when you are in survival mode. Biologically, our brain will not want to do that. Why? Because when we are in any of the big four, right? Fight, flight, freeze, fawn, that is an activated sympathetic nervous system. When that is happening, I want you to almost think about yourself when you're in survival mode as like running from a saber-toothed tiger. That is not the time that you're painting a picture. That is not the time that you're asking somebody how their vacation was. That's not the time that you're even really like uh, eating a sandwich, right? When we are running from a saber-toothed tiger, when we are in survival mode, then guess what? We are not able to reflect. Okay. So, in many ways, reflection is a privilege, and reflection is something that we are able to access when we are in more of a parasympathetic nervous system state. That is why, and I'll do a separate episode on all of this lingo that I'm talking about here. We need to make sure that we are taking care of our nervous system first and foremost. Like, don't even worry about whatever situation is happening externally to you. I mean, I'm including like kids melting down, boss is pissed, house on fire. Like, literally, whatever's external is less important than you getting your state right within you. And when you get your nervous system regulated, then you can address the things that are going to give you the skills so that you pass that level of Mario and you come on up to the balcony with us. And it's always a cycle. Like this is always going to keep happening, this cycle. So don't think like, oh, sweet, I am in the balcony and I will never be down in the trenches again. Not true. Absolutely not true. You will 100% be in the trenches again. I will too. Like we're cyclical in nature as people here doing this darn thing called life. So setting standards. When we go to set standards, I want you to think about three things, right? Number one, and you can do this in reflection. You can do this again at a stoplight. You can do this closing your eyes, putting your hand on your heart. And if you're driving right now, don't close your eyes. But number one is asking yourself, what do I need? In order to set a standard, that standard doesn't come from external information. Okay. A true standard that is an internal standard doesn't come from external of like, oh, I read this book and that should be my standard. Like, oh, I read that book. And then actually, like when I checked in with myself, like I need that thing. And I've really noticed that I haven't had that thing in so long that I do notice myself dysregulated, or I do notice myself like tripping over the same uh, rock or crack on the sidewalk, right? I keep getting in my own way. So part of setting standards is one, asking yourself, what do I need? What do I need? And it could be absolutely outlandish, or it could be something super basic, like I just need some water. But what do I need? Okay. And I'm not going to give you a list of needs or what's appropriate at this point in time because it is all unique to you. I know that sometimes it's really helpful for us to say, well, what should I need, in my relationship? What should I need in my workplace? It is always going to change. It was always going to change, and that's okay because we are ever evolving people doing this thing called life. Okay. So when we're setting our standards, first and foremost is asking ourselves what we need. The second thing, which is equally important, is asking ourselves, how do I want to feel? Right? How do I want to feel? What do I need and how do I want to feel? If you identify how you want to feel, let's say at work, and you don't feel that way, then yes, it becomes your job to either figure out how to feel that way at work, and we can definitely unpack all that, or decide that you're just not available for whatever's going on there. That's true of relationships, friendships. That's true within our families of origin. There's a lot of levels with which is true. Frankly, it's very true of our own standards that we have around our physical health, our mental and emotional health, right? If you, let's just hypothetically say, you have not been putting yourself to bed on time, you are the one who's been available for that. And if you don't want to be available for that, if you know that you need sleep, right? We're setting standards. Let's go with the standards here. One, you need sleep, and two, you want to feel well rested, and that's not happening. Well, then it's up to you. It's up to you to change the game and decide what you are and are not available for. And then the third thing, right? So we're going with what do you need? How do you want to feel? And what's important to you? There are probably a lot more delicious thesaurus words that I could use than the word important. But I'm using the word important here so that you can define what's important to you. Perhaps what's important to you is your value system. Perhaps what's important to you are the actions that you take. Perhaps what's important to you is the fat bank account and the sexy business card. You get to decide, right? You absolutely get to decide. As intimidating as it could feel, this entire thing called our life is a blank canvas. It is a blank canvas that you get to paint. You get to decide. You are the author, the illustrator, you're the artist here. So it is important for you to set your standards by knowing what you need, by knowing how you want to feel, and deciding what's important to you. It's just that simple. I have a lot more notes here, and I'm looking at those notes and I was like, we could talk about time, we could talk about boundaries, we could talk about people, we could talk about relationships, but if you have these three things, right? And they're going to change. They're going to change based on the big six. They're going to change based on the season. They're going to change based on drama. They're going to change based on priority. They should always be evolving. Truthfully, like what was important to me at 25 is not necessarily what's important to me right now. Okay? How I wanted to feel or what I needed then, not as important as right now. Okay? I should be changing and evolving. So I'll save it for another episode. I'll save it for another episode where we will talk time management. I love time management. We'll talk boundaries. Those are very important. We'll talk about relationships and understanding that only certain people get access to you. But just for today, so that you can take today's 3 points, tuck them in your pocket, and practice them. Practice them. Practice them that like you would with like pencil and eraser, because you're going to start off with saying like, what do I need? Oh, well, these 5 things sound good, but oh, am I asking too much? Or, oh, I see what they're having over there, and I don't know, maybe I should be doing the same thing. I don't know. Right? How often that we scroll and we look at what other people are having or what we perceive them to be having in their relationships or, their abs or their vacations or whatever, right? Tap into you. And if you're anything like me, I lived decades outside of myself. Right? Many of us as high achievers do. It sounds very interesting, right? You think, oh, as a high achiever, this is an inside job and you're just grinding all the time. But interestingly enough, as high achievers, like we see the syllabus, we see the brass ring, we see the corporate climb. And so we fix our gaze on that and we put everything we have into embodying that identity or achieving the brass ring or doing the thing. And often that will detach us from ourselves. Been there, done that. I've got the postcard, I got the t-shirt from it. So I'm sharing this with you because getting into relationship with ourselves is the only thing that is going to help us to get into that balcony. And again, life is cyclical, so I can't make any promises that you're going to stay in that balcony. But when you leave that balcony, you're going to have a relationship with yourself where you know that you'll climb back into that balcony because you have these three tools, right? What do I need? How do I want to feel? And what is important to me? All right. You guys know me. I could talk for hours. We could be talking about this all day. But I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure that you like it, you follow us, you give us a good rating. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out. I'm always hanging out on Instagram, and you can always shoot us an email. You can get directly to me, Bailey@themindrise.com. And stay tuned for future episodes. Thanks for joining me today. And if you like this, share it with somebody because that's always fun. All right. Bye, guys. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Mind Rise podcast. Check out our show notes for details and to get in on the latest at Mind Rise. Visit us on Instagram @The Mind Rise